and welcome viewers from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC here at Gold. And today I'm chatting with Chesney Willis about her upcoming presentation titled Feeding to Thrive, Developmental Consideration and Support for Feeding the Premature Infant. Welcome, Chesney.
Hi, thank you, Kristen.
It's wonderful to have you here. I'm very excited about the presentation, and I have some questions with regards to the topic for you. But before we go there, talk a little bit about your backgrounds and the work you're doing.
Absolutely. So I'm a feeding therapist, which really means I'm a speech language pathologist, but I work in a clinical setting. I'm also a certified lactation consultant. So primarily I'm serving our post-NICU graduates in the feeding clinic and really helping families to work through some of their feeding challenges. I get to work with the whole age range of pediatrics, but my passion and the area I spend most of my clinical time working is with infants, particularly those who were born early or who have some underlying medical conditions that are challenging their feeding skills.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic information about the wonderful background that you have. So let me ask you this: the little late preterm ones, right? They can be like the little ah, they can look so ready and ready to go, and some of them might be quite, have a good size, and then there might be some hidden surprises to us. So talk to me a little bit about what we might encounter.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much variety in this
Hmm.
population, especially, and they can be some of the more challenging cases, particularly when I worked in the hospital setting. We would get consults on all the late preterm infants, and most of them would be rooming in,
Hmm.
but they did demonstrate some of those early readiness cues. We would spend a lot of time learning to latch, but they just really don't always have the stamina that they need to
Hmm.
engage in full feeds and really be successful supporting not only their growth, but for helping to bring in and establish a healthy milk supply for the mom.
Yeah, thank you for that. So now going to the ones that are a little bit, even younger, the preemies, the very little ones in the NICU, right? I know we can imagine that they have, feeding issues, especially with the suck, swallow, breathe, that. By when should we really, what gestational age do we typically see the coordination of that? And walk us through a little bit about the development there.
Yes, that's a challenging question. Again, just I think because each baby is so unique, and it
Mhm.
really depends on the reason for their preterm birth. So there may be some underlying medical conditions that cause the prematurity, or perhaps they had to be induced and taken a little bit early. Generally, we tend to start seeing more rooting and readiness cues around 34 weeks. And depending on the unit, a lot of places will use more cue-based feeding approaches. So allowing those babies to participate in some early
Mhm.
feeding learning experiences. But then I find that it's really about supporting them for safe feeds so that they're learning to feed in a way that's going to sustain them for the long term. There's a lot of incoordination at that age. So I would say that as a baby nears their due date, we're going to be seeing more mature feeding, but
Mhm.
still not the same level probably to what a baby who was born at term would experience.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for that. That was a great explanation. I know it's a wide range there,
Yeah.
so it's very hard to narrow that down. We learn a lot about responsive feeding.
Mhm.
Can you explain a little bit about that? How does it differ from traditional feeding, and how does that apply for our preemies, or does it really apply?
I think that with responsive feeding, what I love about it is that it translates at every feeding stage of development. So
Hmm.
we do a lot of teaching, even with parents who have toddlers, about responding to their infants or their young children. But
Hmm.
it begins very early. And I think about the babies who maybe didn't have interruptions in their early feeding experiences and still know that they can come straight up to the breast and engage in some of those early feeds. And a mom or a parent is naturally responsive to what the baby's doing. I think when you have the challenge of delivering earlier than anticipated, some of that intuitiveness may get lost,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe dampened down a little bit. And so empowering these families to maybe reestablish those natural connections,
Mm-hmm.
and learning to read their particular infant's cues that might tune them into when they're not only ready to eat, but maybe how to modify the feeding overall, to keep it a little bit safer and more at the infant's level.
Hmm. That's so important, especially for parents in the NICU. Especially, many parents, they often feel that's not really their baby. It's the baby, taken care of by the
Mm,
nurses, by the hospital staff. So learning about the cues, learning about, I mean, it's also a wonderful way to bond with baby and be involved and feel like for the parents also having agency and being part of the
sure,
care, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. So, you work in a team, right? You collaborate. So, talk to me a little bit about interdisciplinary collaboration and how that improves outcomes for premature
Yeah.
infants.
When I was in the hospital, I work at a teaching institution, so I had access to all kinds of different healthcare workers, and we really did get to work as a team.
Hmm.
And I love that in my clinic now, I have just some brilliant minds I get to work alongside. I work very closely with a dietitian who is instrumental, particularly with these babies who are early, because they do need a little extra support, considering that early disruption in their prenatal stay, if you will, was disrupted. And so it's important to nourish them, but also not to overtax them in terms
Hmm.
of how we feed them. And then the other therapists that I get to work with, such as occupational therapy and physical therapy, to think through all those body systems and how they coordinate together so that the baby is in the best, most supportive position for their breathing, their swallowing, and their functioning. And then beyond that, we do have some specialized teams. I get to work on an aerodigestive team, so working closely with a pulmonologist,
Mm.
with an ENT, with a gastroenterologist, really just to help. Solidify that feeding is not just one body system, but really the coordination of all those systems working together.
Hmm. And how do you prepare parents for the journey home from the NICU? I'm sure there is extensive education as well.
Yes, and I think it depends on what their baby has been able to demonstrate in the unit, or if they're going to be going home as a full oral feeder, or maybe need a little additional support on the side. But the best thing that we can do is to have frequent contact with them so that
Hmm.
they feel empowered, that they've
Hmm.
had ample practice with feeding their baby, and that they know those early communication responses so that they can have safe feeds at home to really support their overall nutrition and their growth.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Before I let you go now, Chesney, one last question for you. What are you hoping our viewers will learn from your presentation?
I just really hope that we can serve these families in a way that helps maybe reestablish the disruptions that they experienced. I think focusing in on what these babies and parents are doing well and what they can do to really empower them, and as you said, give them more agency in the care of their own
Mhm.
babies. So we really are kind of that liaison, as you said earlier, just between the medical community and trying to re-establish these natural feeding experiences for them.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Chesney Willis,
Yes,
for being here with me today, chatting about all the wonderful work you're doing out there in the community for the families and also about your upcoming presentation here at Gold.
thank you so much, Kristen.
And now some information for our viewers. This presentation titled Feeding to Thrive, Developmental Consideration and Support for Feeding the Premature Infant is part of the Breastfeeding Solutions for Preterm and Late Preterm Infants lecture pack, which is right now the add-on package for our Lactation online conference of 2025. We have some amazing keynotes that you can sign up for. They are open access. So I would like you to visit goldlactation.com. There you'll find all the information and how to sign up for those freebies as well. Thank you, Chesney, again for being
Yes, thank
here.
you.
And thank you for all our viewers here. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.